Hi, I'm Bhavna Shyamalan, and I really enjoyed my experience on Total Mom Sense. Kanika provides an incredible space to have discussions about how we do this thing called life, so I hope you enjoy it.
Today's sponsor is Kindred Bravely, a brand that came to life in 2015 by Deanne Akerson, a mom of two, when she couldn't find any comfortable and functional pajamas while nursing her second son. She decided to design her own, and this led to one of their best-selling pajama sets, the Davy Nursing and Maternity Pajamas. As moms, we have to stick together, which is where Kindred comes from. And bravely, being a mom can be tough. It's not for the faint of heart. It takes courage and bravery, right? Kindred Bravely is devoted to making life easier for pregnant and nursing moms. From breast pads and non-skid socks to nursing bras and pajamas, Deanne creates every piece with comfort, beauty, and function in mind. And her designs have been recognized by parent-tested, parent-approved, the Cribsy Awards and the Mom's Choice Awards. Behind the scenes, Kindred Bravely employs more than 24 work-at-home moms who share Deanne's mission and values. Along with delivering top-of-the-line clothing, the KB moms provide incredible customer service, share quality content, and engage with social media communities. Use my exclusive promo code MOMSENSE20 to save 20% off your purchase at kindredbravely.com. Some exclusions may apply.
When you have young children and you're giving everything, you can feel a sense of depletion, and your life has changed so much. You know, as women, we change our lives and ourselves so much when we have children. So I had decided at that point that I needed to do something different. And that's why I started taking these Zumba classes. But then I cannot even tell you how shy I was. It was terrifying for me to even have photos. But I decided that from that point on, because I needed things to change and I have to be responsible for my own life changing and responsible for where my life is, I said, I'm just going to say yes to everything and worry about it later.
As moms, we often wonder, am I doing enough for my kids? I'm here to tell you, you are super mama. That's because we have an undeniable superpower, our intuition, and it never steers us wrong. I call it our mom sense. Hi, I'm Kanika Chadda Gupta, and I'm the host of That's Total Mom Sense. I'm a journalist, entrepreneur, wife, and mom of 3, twins plus 1. Now, if I had $1 every time I heard, gee, you have your hands full. On my podcast, I interview influential moms from various industries and cover topics that all first-time parents grapple with, from getting your baby to sleep to screen time allowance, your new normal in your marriage, and how to dedicate time to yourself. Learn and laugh along with That's Total Mom Sense. We all know and love M. Night Shyamalan as a world-renowned director, producer, and actor who was labeled the next Spielberg by Newsweek in 2002. His films have grossed over $3 billion globally, with cult classics like The Sixth Sense, which received nominations for the Academy Award for Best Director and Best Original Screenplay, Signs, The Last Airbender, and the Unbreakable Series. We may also be fans of Saleka, his daughter, who is a singer-songwriter and wrote an original song for his recent release, Old, and has a voice as smooth as silk, reminiscent of old-school R&B. But today, I'm honored to interview M. Night's wife, Bhavna Vaswani Shyamalan, who stays away from the limelight a bit. She is the silent strength of the family and is the glue who is keeping it all together. For more than 15 years, Bhavna Shyamalan, PhD, has served in her role as co-founder and vice president of the M. Night Shyamalan Foundation. The foundation focuses on discovering and supporting grassroots leaders around the world who are moving depressed communities out of poverty and oppression. These global leaders are empowering their communities by supporting social justice, equality, and access to basic needs such as food, water, and education. With a deep belief in human dignity and freedom as a birthright, as well as in our joint responsibility to become participants in the fight for social equality and justice, have been Dr. Shyamalan's driving force in creating and steering the efforts of the foundation. With an international upbringing and global perspective, Dr. Shyamalan has developed a keen awareness of the power of poverty to determine the life course of individuals, families, and communities by severely limiting opportunity and choice. The foundation leaders work to eliminate those barriers. More recently, Dr. Shyamalan has focused on helping most disenfranchised communities, the forgotten and disposable people entrapped and exploited by modern-day slavery and human trafficking. Although born in India, Bhavna was raised in Hong Kong before her family moved to the U.S. An immigrant herself, she is keenly aware of the challenges posed to immigrants in any new country. Having traveled widely, however, her exposure to different people and cultures has not only reinforced her belief in the gift diversity brings, but has also deepened her commitment to valuing each individual life. Dr. Shyamalan oversees the Foundation's international grants, the implementation of its vision and mission, strategic growth, fundraising, and overall operations. Additionally, Dr. B, as she's known in the fitness world, is co-owner at Vibe Vault Fit, a boutique fitness and wellness studio in Pennsylvania, and she's been teaching dance fitness classes since 2011. Dr. B believes working out can be inspired and should address health and fitness in all aspects, including body, mind, and spirit. Her goal is to help you make your own wellness a priority and claim the life that is waiting for you. Earlier in her career, Dr. Shyamalan worked as a therapist in the counseling centers of Swarthmore College and St. Joseph's University. She earned her doctorate in clinical developmental psychology from Bryn Mawr College with a BA in psychology from New York University. Bhavna and her husband, M. Night Shyamalan, have 3 daughters, and they reside in Pennsylvania. Bhavna, it's such a pleasure to have you on That's Total Mom Sense today.
I'm so happy to be here today.
Well, let's start from your childhood.
Okay.
You've had a very international kind of exposure from the onset. So tell us a little bit about it.
My parents were both born and raised in India, but when they got married, they left India and they were in Africa for a little bit. So Uganda, and I spent my first year of life in Uganda. I don't really remember anything about it, but I always have this affinity to Africa and all the countries there. And then when I was 1 year old, it was the time of Idi Amin, we moved to Hong Kong, and I lived there until I was 17. And so did all of my high school in Hong Kong. And then we had to move because my father's company closed. And he actually went through bankruptcy at the time, and he got a job here in the States. And so we moved to the States. And we were in New Jersey for a while, which for me was such a different experience because I had never even seen a house and I didn't really understand what a suburb was. I went to school for college in New York. You know, we've lived here ever since. But then when my husband and I got married, he grew up in Philly. So I'm in Philly now.
The relationship that a girl, especially as an adolescent, has with her father truly shapes her character and mindset. So tell me a little bit about that.
I'm a psychologist by degree, and I don't practice. I thought I wanted to be a therapist when I was studying, and I went all the way and got my doctorate in clinical psych. And it was a clinical developmental program. So we did a lot of work in developmental psychology. And one of the studies that I found really interesting was that they found that girls' self-esteem is very much tied to how her father interacts with her and how her father sees her more than her mother. My mother never finished high school. My father didn't really end up finishing college. He did start, and there weren't really doctors in our family, and I didn't have any model, but I was like, I'm going to go all the way. I'm going to get the highest degree I can possibly get.
Right.
And that's because my father believed in it, you know? And one of the things that he had said to me, I think I was somewhere between the age of 13, 14, very impressionable kind of age, you know, those teenage years. And at that time in our family, we used to pray every night. You know, we had a mandir, which is the temple at home, which is very traditional. And we used to pray and then read a passage from our holy scriptures, which is the Bhagavad Gita. We would read a passage and then interpret it. My father one time said, when I was explaining something I thought about a passage, he goes, I like the way you think. And that was everything to me. Like, I feel like I centered my whole life around that. And that became something that I grabbed onto and held for my whole entire life as to who I wanted to be, who I aspired to be. I wanted to aspire to be that person that he was proud of, as much as, remember that he saw that in me, maybe at an early age. So maybe I did have something that I could contribute to the world in that realm because he thought so.
Let's see. Your mom was very involved in the Indian community, and she was a disciple of Dada Vaswani, whom I revere and respect as well.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about her, work and charitable work.
Ever since she was a little girl, followed even the predecessor of Dada J.P. Vaswani, who was the person that we knew during our lifetime. He's passed on now, but then his predecessor, Dada T.L. Vaswani, was who she initially followed.
Uh-huh.
And she's the type of disciple that anything they say, like, she won't make a move in her life or a decision in her life without their blessing.
Their blessing. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So her faith is that strong, and that's how she goes about it. I have myself a very conflicted relationship with that kind of idea. I mean, I would think of myself more as a spiritual person, and I'm very happy that we had religion in our upbringing, because I think it's very grounding, and the value system is one that I think was super important and impressive on us when we were growing up. So my mom she's never been into monetary things or materialistic things. She's always been super simple, like, to her, the spirituality matters, the religion matters, and being good matters. And so I think we definitely got a lot from that value system, and I'm happy to have had that. The piece of it that's difficult for me is the dogmatism of religion, right. And the certain things that you have to do or have to be an okay person. And
and it's like, who's actually determining all this?
Exactly. And I think the only way you can learn and grow is to take that risk, make the mistake, have the agency, have the responsibility to make it your own. Each step I make is a step that I've decided to make.
Right.
And I have to be responsible for whether it goes right or whether it goes wrong. And if it goes wrong, then what's spiritual is about accepting it.
When you went to New York, that's where you met M. Night or Manoj.
Yes. Yeah.
So tell us about how that transpired.
Yes. Well, I wasn't allowed to date.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
So we didn't date each other until
oh my goodness.
No. So I met him through a friend of mine in college. We were in the same friend group. I didn't have a lot of people that I dated just because I wasn't really allowed to. It was a big deal. Like, when you're grown up in that culture and you're told you're supposed to have an arranged marriage, anything you do, has big consequences. So you don't date unless you think it's going to be a person you're going to marry. At least that's kind of how I approached it. We were friends for about a year before we even told each other we liked each other.
Right.
And
that's great.
And he was just very unusual. At the time, he was different from people that I have met. And he was in film I'd never met anybody who wanted to do film. Nobody I'd known had ever been in film. And he was creative and artistic and funny. And so those were all things that I found very intriguing and interesting. And we could just talk for hours. But I didn't think I should date him in the beginning. And we just really liked each other. And then I decided, you know what? I'm just going to allow myself this piece of happiness. And then when we graduate, I'm going to just get an arranged marriage. And that's what I'm supposed to do, and blah, blah, blah. But it was really funny because then it came up to the time of graduation, and he and I ended up graduating together. And he was supposed to move to LA to pursue film. And I was going to go to a wedding in Manila. Thought my mom would introduce me to some guys, and we would, I'd do the arranged marriage thing. And then I got into a fight with my mother over a job that I wanted. I wanted to work at Harlem Hospital, and I was going for an interview for the job on one day. And the night before, my mother and I got into a big argument about it and about some other things. I don't even remember what, but I was just so mad and childless. I was like, I'm not going with you to Manila.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going with you. And so I didn't go with her. And she went. And the night didn't leave for LA. And so we just ended up solidifying, like, okay, we really want to be together that summer.
And what do you think, Knight found intriguing in you?
He said that when he met me, like, we bumped into each other on the street through our mutual friend. And he said he went home that day to his dorm room and told his roommates that I just met my wife.
When you know.
I guess so. So,
Wow.
He's pretty strong. Like, he has a very strong sense of what he wants and clear view and vision.
As you guys were starting out, you, as a therapist and him as a budding filmmaker, it must have been hard to make ends meet, but you had all the trappings you needed to get by.
When I told my mom and parents that I wanted to get married to him, of course, we had to ask Dada first. And so we sent him a 7-page letter. And then he sent kind of like an emissary to me to ask me, it was just somebody from our community, to ask me questions. And one of the questions was, well, going to be a filmmaker, like really, and he may not make any money. And I said I was okay with it because we just, I said, I have a brain, I can work. I plan to work, and I'm happy to do whatever. I think maybe we were a little bit naive about how risky it was, even for my husband. Like, when we think about it now, to have, he was one of the first Indian filmmakers. He was very young at the time. He was one of the youngest ever to hit certain milestones in his career path. And we decided to live in Philly because his family is here.
Right.
No one did that. Like, so he was deciding already to be an outsider and still try to make it. He was already an outsider just by virtue of his culture and his age. But we still decided to live here because we wanted very much to raise our children here. But when we were first starting out, like our first several months, I was the one working and he was at home writing, screenplays. And then we actually moved to his mom and dad's house for a year because I wanted to move. I wanted to start my doctorate, and I knew I had to start it in Philly because that's where we eventually wanted to move and have children. And because the program is so long, I figured I'd have children during the program. So there's a point at which our bank account was like dwindling to zero, and we're sitting up in Knight's sister's old bedroom, and that's where we're living. And, things seemed pretty rough at the point. But then he wrote the screenplay, and it turned out like he'd made 2 movies before then that came out but had a very limited release and really didn't make anything at all. And then he wrote a screenplay and it sold in a bidding war, which was crazy for us. Like, it actually hasn't gotten made yet, but it got sold in a bidding war. And that was when he made his first money.
Wow.
And then we got our own place. Of course, there are things that didn't turn out the way that he would have wanted, that what we would define as failures or what people may look like as failures. But to him, they're examples of how to learn to grow, right? They're experiences that teach you something. And yes, he will get down when things don't go well for a period of time. And it does weigh heavily on him. He's not immune. He's a human being, but he always gets up.
One thing that you've shared with me is that when you had your children, you are someone who is an all-in kind of person. And you knew that you wanted to be this very devoted, hands-on mom. And so what was that motherhood journey like, where you just really just stepped into that role and owned it?
I think ever since I was little, I was so worried about how to be a good mom. I think part of me taking developmental psychology was about that too, because I wanted to learn how to be a good mom.
Wow. So early on.
Yeah, so early on. I mean, I even started learning how to cook early because I knew I had to cook for my family, having grown up here and having children that are going to be different from the way that I was raised. I wanted to raise them differently as well. And, the older generation, I think, sometimes have a more hands-off approach to parenting. And I think there's actually some really good stuff to do. I mean, I think that's good in many ways. I don't really believe in helicopter parenting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's good to give your kids some freedom and not always be on them every single moment. But at the same time, I didn't feel the involvement of my parents enough. Like I didn't feel like I had necessarily guides through certain things that we were going through, especially because of the generational gaps, right? So they didn't know how to guide us through the world we were living in. And I wanted to know their world. I wanted to be involved in their world. So I was on the board in their school. I was literally at my children's school every single day, volunteering, picking up there. So I was super, super involved, and I never really wanted to miss everything. And so I was still going through my doctorate at first. And then I've always worked, but I've always worked part-time. And ever since Saleka was my first, I only ever did anything part-time because I wanted to be home and I didn't want to miss any firsts. I didn't want to miss any plays. I didn't want to miss any events, anything. I was involved in homework all the time. I was, my kids went to a private school, and so they weren't bused. And I was adamant about picking them up and dropping them off. My husband actually would drop off if he wasn't shooting a film, and I would pick up. But then if he was shooting, I would always drop off as well. And even there were times where, schedules got really tight, especially if you start to have more kids and there's more pickups and drop-offs, and it gets super complicated. And they all have activities. My husband would be like, don't worry about pickup and drop off. Like I got to spend an hour and a half in the car.
Oh my gosh.
On occasion, just taking them to things. And he's like, don't worry about it. And I'm like, no, this is so important because it's the only time they may talk to me.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
They say one sentence to me, I'm using it. I'm going to pick them up. And it doesn't mean you don't get tired. It doesn't mean that it's not hard and you're not exhausted and, you're not worn out and or anything like that. But it was very important to me. It was important to me to bake them the cupcakes and to send that to school and, not to do to store bought. Because it's the little things you remember. I remember going to high school and one of my friends always had cupcakes in her lunchbox that her mother had made for her.
Okay.
I always thought that was such a sweet gesture of love. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to give that gesture to my kids. And so that was something that was important to me. And
did you know there's an organizing app designed just for families? Named a must-have mobile app on the Today Show, Cozy is an app to help families who are juggling school schedules, practices, meetings, doctor's appointments, and even helps them schedule a workout or a date night. Here's how it works. Cozy tracks everyone's schedules and events in one place with a shared color-coded calendar. Cozy even reminds others about events so you don't have to. No more missed pickups or double bookings. It's easy to get started. You can even pull in events from your family's personal, work, and school calendars. Cozy helps with other things on your plate too. The shared grocery list lets the whole family add items in real time, and you'll never find yourself at the store without the list. It's always on your phone and up to date. If you need help figuring out dinner, there's even a place to store recipes and plan meals ahead. The best part? It's free. Just download Cozy Family Organizer from the App Store, and that's spelled COZI, and get the free app today. You all know I love being organized, using calendars to sync up and labels so you never drop the ball. Cozy up with Cozy to keep you and your family on track.
You have fostered a passion for dance.
Yes.
and are now a celebrated Zumba instructor. Yes. So tell us how Zumba just came into your life.
So like you said, I love dance. I always had a passion for dance. I never had any training, but I came across Zumba when I started to try to take dance classes after having my first two children. I wanted to find something for me, and then I wanted to find a form of exercise. And I really am not, I didn't consider myself athletic. I was always the last on the team, being picked in school and like running last in cross country. It was not a good picture. So I laugh now that I think of myself as a fitness instructor, but I just started to look for dance as a form of doing something fun for myself and being active. And so I took adult dance classes. And once I took something in salsa, I took a salsa dance class, and it was so much fun. I love salsa. I love music from around the world. Like I love any place in the world. I think I love beats. I love drum. I love something that's really primal. And so I took salsa, but it ended up being all couples and me. So I was like,
that's a drag.
Yeah. So, I mean, the good thing about it was I got to dance with the instructor a lot of the time, and he was so great. So it felt so good to be able to learn from, him and dancing with him. But I felt very awkward otherwise. So I kept looking for salsa classes that didn't, require couples. And somebody said to me, "Have you tried Zumba?" And I said, "No." So I searched for Zumba, did not know it was exercise, and just went to my local Y. And I walked into this class, and there was this, little Brazilian woman, Sandra Goes, who was teaching the class. And I just absolutely fell in love with the format. And I left that class that day, and I called my husband and I said, if I can just do Zumba for the rest of my life, I'm going to be happy. So that was the beginning of it. And it's funny, like when you start getting into Zumba and, on the days that you don't get to go to class for some reason, your family knows. And they're like, "You didn't go to Zumba, did you?
Right.
Didn't you? You're cranky." So it really became something that sustained me. And I auditioned. I got this on tape. And when I ended up being on this DVD, then they asked me to teach a workshop at Zumba convention. I was not even teaching classes. I was not an instructor, and I never imagined being an instructor, but said, yes, I'm going to worry about it later.
Okay.
So I got together a team of people that I wanted to work with, some experienced, some not experienced, and started putting together this it was in Bollywood and Bhangra, and put together this workshop for convention. And our first convention out, it was so well received. It changed the trajectory of my life in some ways. And it gave me so much a sense of my own self, a sense of freedom, finding who I was, even through dance, which is something I think of it as therapy, this dancing, just the happy hormones. I mean, it's a release, and there's so much out there now, the research that's been done actually that proves the impact of dancing on your level of happiness, your self-esteem, and also things like Alzheimer's, all of those neurons that are connecting through learning dance and connecting the right and the left brain, they help stave off Alzheimer's. And so it's a very, very good thing to do. I think I've been doing this over a decade now, and I now co-own a studio called Vibe Vault Fit with my partner, and we're both instructors in dance fitness, and we have like all these other things. And part of what I wanted to do with creating this studio was to both have the fitness aspect, but also the wellness aspect, because I think body, mind, soul has to be developed together to really make the most you can out of life.
Tell us about, the foundation, and, it truly is like a way to honor your father and his legacy, but you're doing so many different charitable works and projects. And I know I would want my audience to get involved as well. So tell us about it.
Yeah. Since I was little, I wanted to do something. I think this is from my parents, obviously, about giving back. And I always thought I wanted to open something, but given my husband's success and career, we did decide at some point that we would open a foundation. And so we have both pieces in the foundation. So we gave money to, education was a big thing for both of us. And we did scholarships. And so we would give scholarships to inner city youth that were promising for college. We did an adoption grant for kids being adopted from India, help with because it's very costly to adopt. So we helped families here that wanted to adopt but didn't have the money to do that. And we did a housing grant. We did a food after school program for food. So we did a bunch of things, but then realized at some point that, and it was more my husband who was like, we're not really having an impact. Like we're doing things, but we're not moving the needle in any grand way. We're not making systemic change.
Right.
But one day my father brought me an article from the New York Times, and it was about this woman, Usha, who had grown up in the slums in India. And it was a slum community that had been terrorized by some kind of slum lord, like a gang, She had this situation where this guy was actually raping a neighbor of hers, and he had killed and raped and pillaged all the families there. They lived in terror, and she went over and reported to the police. The police came, but in India, sometimes there's a lot of corruption and you can buy off the police. And he had bought off the police. So they didn't do anything, but they told him that she had informed. So they went over to her place and were threatening her. And she stood up to them. They had like this gas tank for cooking. And she said, if you come anywhere near me, I'm going to blow up my house, and I'm going to blow you up too. Okay. So they had a standoff for hours, but then he ended up leaving. This was the first time in the community anyone had ever stood up to this man. So she had started this kind of revolution of thought and of belief and in this community. And now they were all looking to her. And she was the only one in the community that had an education. I ended up going to India. My dad brought me this article and he's like, go help her.
Yeah.
Like,
oh my gosh.
Right, I don't know what to do, but I'm like, okay. So I connected with a family friend who had done international grant work, went with her to India and met with Usha. We got a translator from the New York Times who suggested a translator and in India, and she came with us. And we spoke to Usha. And my idea was that I would go to India, and because by virtue of her education, I thought that's what made her strong and made her stand up. So I thought, okay, maybe the good thing to do is go there and build a school and like provide education for the whole community.
Yeah.
And when I went there and I said, okay, Usha, what do you think? We'll build a school. And she goes, no, kids here have school. They just can't go to school because they have to work to earn enough money for their families.
Right.
And so what we need to do is we need livelihood training for all of the women in the community. And so I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's what we'll do. So we found an NGO. I interviewed a couple of NGOs, found one that would do the training with Usha. They trained all the women in the community, which was like 150 women, 50 men as well. And I visited it again 3 years later, and the whole community, like I could not recognize it. It was transformed. It was suddenly like from what was broken down mud huts, and I'll share some photos with you. It was horrible and it was dark and people didn't come out of their homes, to now like you had these actual structures, real housing structures, colorful, pink, blue, yellow, kids biking. It was like a movie, like transportation.
Oh my goodness.
It was incredible. And it was because, and this is what landed us on our model for the foundation. It was because we found a leader in a community that was invested in a community that was determined to do anything to help them, that had already moved the needle in some way in her life. So showed that capacity, and we followed what she said. And so that's what we do now. So we find leaders around the world, and it doesn't have to be any specific location. We go anywhere that the need is, and we just find these leaders. And then my executive director and I will always travel. So we do a level of vetting that is, from here, we'll interview them. And now it's easier over Zoom if they have an internet connection, or we do phone. And we get as much information from the websites, from the annual reports, from if they have them, and any articles or anything that we can find. And then our last step is actually, once they feel like they fit the model of our leaders, we will go and see program on the ground. We'll look at the challenges that they face, what's really happening on the ground, how is the organization really answering those challenges, what is their level of impact, what is the level of dedication and buy-in of the community. So we look at all of that, and then we assess it, and then we come back, report to our board, and then we decide whether or not to take on that organization and leader. And we really found that using this model, and we use it domestically as well, we work in the education space and closing the achievement gap, and also now on criminal justice reform. So we do that here, and we find leaders that are working here domestically as well, Philadelphia primarily.
And, this brings me to Shyamalan, which is just such a fun take on all things Halloween and fun and frightful. So tell us about that, and then the philanthropic kind of efforts behind it.
Yeah. So I never thought that we would fundraise, because most of the funding for the foundation has just been personal, like Knight and I. And we realized that these leaders really were doing a ton of great work. And we felt that the more support that we can get for them, the better. So we started to do this fundraising event. And of course, my husband being my husband, we had to do it around Halloween. And so we called it Shyamalan. Our first executive director actually coined that. And it's kind of hokey, but it's stuck and it's cute. I love it.
Yeah.
It's fun. There's a skill set that I haven't told you about that my husband and I have, which is partying. We do
awesome.
like to party. We wanted to make it nothing like any of the fundraising events that you usually go to. So we didn't want it to be kind of the sit down dinner where you're lectured at, or you see this whole thing about the foundation. Now, we do talk a little bit about the foundation. Our leaders, some of our local leaders come. And so you do get to meet them, and we do introduce them. But we want you to have fun. Like, we just want it to be a super fun night that you won't forget. And so we call it, our tagline is be bad, do good. Costumes are amazing. Every year, the costumes have gotten better and better, and it's just super fun.
Let's not forget our quote of the day.
Is there a quote that you live by?
I love a quote by a Rumi that it says, close your eyes, fall in love, and stay there. I think self-love was a journey that's been hard for me. I'm still on it, but I have found the importance of self-compassion and self-love is so powerful in your life. Sometimes people think of it like, especially if you've gone up in the Indian way, you're taught so much not to have ego that you think it's wrong to think well of yourself. Loving yourself, oh my God, what is that, right? Until you truly accept and have compassion for yourself. And I don't think that you can grow into the person that you really want to be, because if you're attacking yourself, you tighten and you're fighting yourself. And when you're in fight flight mode, you can't lift, you can't change, you can't grow. So you really have to love yourself into being the person that you want to be. So that quote really speaks to me because of that reason. And then the other thing that I've learned, and the last quote that I really love, is by Viktor Frankl, which is, it's something like, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space, you can choose your response. And in that response lies your growth and freedom. And I've really learned now, like, meditation is something that I've really taken on in the last several years. And it's so powerful. And I think a big part of meditation is finding space between stimulus. It's about growing that space between stimulus and response. And when you're able to grow that space between when something happens and how you react, you have so much more control if you allow yourself space to really kind of sit, to decide, to let something be, and to really decide how it is that you want to respond rather than just reacting.
Yes.
So I think it's such a powerful thing.
And lastly, where can my audience find you, follow you, and support what you're doing?
So for the foundation, they can go mnsfoundation.org. That's our website for Vibe Vault Fit. And we have online classes, by the way, if you want them. You can go to Vibe Vault Fit, so VIBE, Vault, VAULT, fit.com. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook, just under Bhavna Shyamalan. You can find me.
That's so great.
Yeah.
Bhavna, thank you. Thank you so much. I love that you got to kind of share a bit about yourself. You are an incredible wife, mother, friend, visionary, giver to the universe. And I'm very lucky to know you.
Thank you. And thanks for creating this space, really, to, I think, explore and think, because I think that's such a powerful gift that you're giving, even just in talking with you, I'm learning more, and I feel like it's a gift given to me. So thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. My pleasure. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Bhavna Shyamalan. Bhavna, thank you so much for opening your heart and your mind and sharing all the different perspectives you have on life and motherhood and career and giving back to humanity. You are an inspiration. I do want to promote Shamaween, which is happening on Saturday, October 23rd in Philadelphia. The theme is Be Bad, Do Good. There are various tiers of admission to the event. There's general admission at $250. VIP starts at $1,500 and goes up to $9,000. And all of the proceeds benefit the MNS Foundation and their efforts to build up communities that are underserved and overlooked. To register for the event, visit the website mnsfoundation.org. If you enjoyed this episode on That's Total Mom Sense, definitely rate, review, and subscribe if you haven't already, wherever you listen to podcasts. It really helps, and I love sharing your feedback. Follow me at Kanika Chadda Gupta and at That's Total Mom Sense for updates on all of my distinguished guests. And you can visit thatstotalmomsense.com to watch press and videos and read my articles too. Remember, always trust your mom sense and your dad sense. Stay strong, super parents. See you next time.
That's Total Mom Sense.